Hello and welcome. We're glad you could join us today for the discussion with Invest Alberta, the investment promotion agency for the Western Canadian province. As our audience continues to log on, we'll set the stage for the conversation and then get to introductions here shortly. We're going to dive into two key topics today. The first is all about pushing forward on existing perceptions rather than pushing back, which is the typical response when people come with preconceived notions of another place. The second is measurement. Every place really struggles to show how marketing is influencing location decisions, and Alberta has gone through a bit of a journey on that themselves, but has really unlocked a really interesting way of doing so to show value. And so there is plenty to cover today, and with that, I will introduce my counterpart. Shea Coburn is Director of Marketing for Invest Alberta. Shea, an early morning welcome to you from the Mountain Time Zone there in North America. Can you give us a brief introduction of who you are and then what Invest Alberta's mission is for the province?
Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. I'm Shea Coburn, as Steve said, Director of Marketing with Invest Alberta. I've been with them for about a year and a half. And when I came in, we essentially hit the ground running with these campaigns. So excited to talk about that today. For those of you who are not familiar with Invest Alberta, our mandate is to attract business and investment to the province from outside the province. So we're looking globally, we're looking in Asia, we're looking in Europe, we're looking in the States, we're looking at other parts of Canada, looking to attract businesses that have an interest in the industries where we thrive, which we will be talking a little bit about further in this call.
Yeah, excellent. And I imagine a few people on the call have been to Alberta, some maybe not. It is a big place, a diverse place with two major cities, very pristine wilderness, as we were just talking about, and plenty more. This is asking a lot, but in a couple sentences, can you give us an overview of Alberta, the province?
Oh, Alberta, the province. So for context, we were also talking about the Netherlands a little bit before this. I think we would fit probably 3 or 4 of the Netherlands in Alberta for context of how big we are. So given that size, we have quite a diversity of industries that we play in. Most people are most familiar with energy. That is kind of our bread and butter. We've been doing it for a really long time, and we do it really well. We're also, because of our expertise in energy, quite good at things in clean energy, looking at CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. More recently, the energy expertise has also played well in terms of data center and tech development in the province. Agriculture is another huge one. We are a prairie province after all. So if you're familiar with Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the three of us kind of play in that agriculture space. We also have quite a presence in the defense world. So as some of you know, Canada has been ramping up our defense investment, and Alberta will play a key piece in that. Particularly Edmonton is quite well known for, Edmonton is central to the province if you look at a map. Calgary's a little bit more south, and then you've got all of the north of Alberta as well, which is where a lot of the oil and gas activity happens, along with agriculture and other things. But yeah, defense will be a big up-and-comer for us right now as well. We have some movement in other tech spaces too, such as fintech is a big one for us. We do a bit in life sciences. We have a really strong research presence in a variety of fields. We have a number of post-secondaries in the province. And I believe we have something like over 65% of our population has a post-secondary degree. So we're a pretty highly educated population in a variety of fields. And that's actually one of the biggest value adds we hear from businesses that are moving to the province. Of course, we have beautiful vistas and landscapes too. I don't want to forget the tourism piece. Lots of people, when they hear about Alberta, they think of Banff, which is the Rocky Mountains. That's where Banff is located. There's many beautiful ski hills. There's lots of hiking. There's lakes. There's resorts that, I mean, honestly, you name it, we could do it. But there's also a lot of tourism further north in the province too. It's a much more, I don't want to say fully Arctic, but leaning Arctic type of landscape. Very, very beautiful in its own way. So yeah, lots going on in this province. I probably missed a few things, but always happy to chat further about it if anybody wants to learn more.
No, that's a great summary and certainly tees up some of this conversation quite well. So we can jump in with just some context about the campaign that we're here to talk about. The Resourceful campaign launched in early 2025. under the place brand of Big Bold Alberta, which is relatively new. I think it's 3 years it's been around for Invest Alberta. The campaign was a play off of this double meaning of resourceful, so full of resources, but also resourceful. There's the physical aspects of it, but also the mental side or the mind side of things. It was a business attraction campaign targeting executives across the U.S. and select countries within Europe. And there were two major outcomes that Invest Alberta was really seeking through this. So prior research showed that awareness of Alberta was quite low, especially in further abroad countries, not just the US, but also in Europe and Asia. So getting Alberta to be known and understood in these key industries as a business destination was a first goal. And then it was essential that marketing contributed to the lead pipeline for the organization as well. So that was goal number two. The foundation of the campaign was that many people knew about Alberta's natural resources, as you said, Shea, long history in the energy industry, ties to outdoor recreation, hiking, skiing, beautiful mountains, Banff. But the less obvious point of this is that resourcefulness side, which really manifested itself in multiple ways. So you have its people. You mentioned some of those statistics. Highly educated population. Calgary has the highest concentration of engineers in Canada. Edmonton, certainly from, if you take a look at the two big cities, one of the fastest growing tech markets in North America. But also things like government resourcefulness. There's a great stat that you guys have around 33% of red tape was recently removed. So resourcefulness in government and how you treat the FDI, the investment process for companies. So with all of that background, that's the foundation of this resourceful campaign. With all of that background, can you talk about the situation back when it all started? Where was Invest Alberta? You came in right around the time this was getting going, and how did this concept start to make sense for you and the marketing team?
Yeah, so when I came in, that would have been late 2024. Conversations were kind of starting around the resourcefulness campaign. It hadn't fully been put together and pitched yet. Some work had been done prior to my arrival around what were we doing with our targeting. So that was one piece for sure that was in motion when I arrived. I would say leading up to resourcefulness, we were looking at our campaigns and we were saying, okay, there's a lot of awareness. We're getting a lot of what we'll call prospects, and I can define what that means to Invest Alberta in a minute. But then we would get to the prospect evaluation stage and we'd say, well, these are not actually the companies that we are looking to be working with. So essentially we were getting a lot of attention, but we weren't getting the attention that we were looking for leading up to working with you guys. And so we had looked at all the aspects of our campaigns and we said, okay, we need to do this in a really measured way. If you change everything at once, you will not know what is actually working for you. So we talked about the audience and what we wanted to do with the audience. We made some changes there. We were measuring how that was going. And then we started talking about the content piece, which is where the resourcefulness piece came in. So we had quite a bit of content around a campaign called Alberta Can at one point. We switched to the Big Bold brand. And we were kind of trying to find our way in that. So resourcefulness, I think through a number of conversations with C Studios, we were able to arrive at something that spoke to who Alberta already is and who we've been for many, many years, but also managed to show where we were going in the future and all of the opportunities and possibilities that we had to offer. So it was an interesting pitch. And I remember my first reaction to it. I was like, I thought I said, we don't want to go so hard on the oil and gas side because we have lots of content about that. We need something else. And you guys were great. And you said, yeah, we understand. There's actually 4 angles to this campaign. So we talked through the infrastructure, we talked through the government support, we talked through the talent side of things, and of course the resources side of things. And it was like, okay, this is a much more holistic campaign. This is essentially riffing off of what Alberta's already doing in a way that will hopefully get people to pay attention beyond just, oh, they do energy. And I would say that it worked. I think it went quite well, and we're going to get into some of those stats. But definitely that I think had a big impact on our content piece. So we had the audience, we had the content, but the other piece that we needed to look at was also how were we measuring this? So we have a number of tools, including the information that we get from C Studios, that allow us to go back to our leadership and say, this is how our campaigns have been reporting. Through all of last year, we were deep diving into all of this data. I think anybody who works in marketing these days knows data is everywhere. Like we're not doing the shooting in the dark of the 50s, we're not just throwing a billboard up and saying, well, I think people liked it. Like we can measure everything. So really using that data to our advantage, and looking really hard at what's working and where do we need to improve. Those were the three main pieces of how this campaign went forward. And I think we had a lot of success with it by combining those effectively.
Yeah, let's actually bring up. I'll bring it up here. Just a look at some of the campaign structure. So for all of you joining, we have the Big Bold Alberta as the place brand. We have the campaign as Resourceful. You have your overarching message here and a few related calls to action. As everyone is looking through this and digesting this a bit, I mean, where were I guess where were some of the obstacles that you saw in selling this internally, and how did you go about trying to gain buy-in internally around this campaign?
I think there can be, when you talk about resources in Alberta, there can be, even here, when we know that we get stereotyped, we can often stereotype ourselves too. So people sometimes hear resourceful and they're like, oh, well, you're just talking about just our resources. We have so much more. So one thing for sure in the framing of this campaign internally was to really emphasize that resourceful isn't specifically just resources. It's everything else that we've been talking about. And then also having some of those mocked up campaign pieces to be like, this is what the ads would look like. These are the videos that we would be playing. This is how we're talking about it, to make sure that people understand that it's exactly the calls to action. It's see how resourceful you can be in Alberta. Alberta is resourceful by nature because of all of these 4 different categories of things. I also think there was, I guess I could call it an openness in our organization specifically. There's a support for marketing in our organization, but with high expectations as well. So they want to see, what are you specifically trying to achieve with this? Like, reassure me that this isn't just a shot in the dark, right? So we explained everything we wanted to do from a content piece. We explained, like I mentioned, everything we planned to do with audience. We explained how we were going to measure this, what cadence we were going to be measuring this at, and how often we'd be reporting and checking in to see what needed to be tweaked. So it was a lot of, I guess you could say, reassurance that we would be doing our due diligence to make sure that we were following the campaign effectively. I think the biggest pushback wasn't even necessarily on the campaign itself. It was just like, how much do we continue to support what marketing is doing, right?
Yeah.
Like when do we set the timeline for we need to see results by X in order to continue to go ahead with this?
Yeah. And we'll show here the 4 message pillars. I think this speaks back to a little bit of what you were also talking about, where, okay, this isn't just some tagline or some top level, campaign slogan. It has some depth to it, where we're building this on solid ground. These are the 4 areas, the 4 resources that play into that resourcefulness, and there is a mix here of physical and the mind piece of things that we talked about earlier, with the human resources, the growth resources, and things like that. So, and can you talk maybe a little bit about, resourceful is a generic word. It's not a tagline that screams, "Oh, I think of Alberta right away." But we actually don't. Resourceful is more the North Star. It's not the tagline. It's not the thing that we're marketing. We're marketing Alberta, and we're almost. It's one of those show don't tell
Yeah.
mindsets. I think is in terms of how this has been executed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think resourceful was kind of it was the word we were using internally to make sure that whatever content pieces, whatever targeting we were doing, we were keeping that, like you said, as our North Star internally. Obviously, the language shows up in pieces of our content, but a lot of our content was much more around, like you said, it's like, we've cut red tape by 33%. we have such talented people in this province. Are you looking to grow your business? Here's what that talent landscape looks like. We have so many post-secondaries that can support you in research behind the scenes for your company. The government piece, for sure. Our government is so willing to work with businesses to address what their regulatory needs, their regulatory understanding might need to be. Innovation, like I mentioned, those post-secondaries, they're so integrated into the business community. All of this was everything we were talking about, driving towards that resourceful North Star. So yeah, it was less about make sure resourceful is in every single tagline. That wasn't it. It was more just what is the vibe that we want people to walk away with.
Yep. And we'll show a little bit of the campaign execution here as well. You mentioned this was not an immediate rollout. You did not stop all operations to get everything ready so that when it did roll out, everything was perfect. The website trailed maybe some of the campaigns a little bit. This was a fast train, and even you yourself, I think, was jumping on and trying to stay aboard to some degree. We all were, and so we didn't want to stop the train. We wanted to keep that momentum going. And so, can you talk about the rollout and some of the challenges also with rolling this out slowly and methodically, not slowly, that's the wrong word, but methodically, and being intentional about where things had to go first, just to keep that train momentum going.
Yeah, I think there's anybody who's I hate this statement, but people who've heard the build the plane as you fly it, that line, like I think it's like not a good line because nobody's ever building a plane while you fly it, you will crash. But you could be on the runway, like putting pieces together before the plane takes off, like that might be fine. And I feel like that's kind of what we were doing was, again, constantly coming back to what is the goal, what is the outcome that we are striving towards, because if you're not careful, you can get caught up in a lot of the doing. So you can get caught up in a lot of creating and a lot of what's our next campaign and where are we putting it and who are we targeting and just doing a bunch of things all at once. And then all of a sudden you stop and you're like, wait, we have like 11 tentacles in too many directions and it's not actually going towards our North Star anymore. So as much as we were moving fast, it was also a lot of, okay, here's the next set of content. Is that still in line with our messaging? Okay, we're going to add some new companies into our targeting list. Are they still in alignment with the list that we had started with from the beginning? Okay, we're measuring things on an ongoing basis, ensuring that what we're measuring is consistent so that we have something to compare to, that we're not getting, I don't know, like interesting sparkly things off to the side. Like, oh, there's an interesting piece of data. Like, yes, of course, look at the outliers, but careful not to go down the rabbit holes. So I think the challenge of doing something where, to what you said, like, we didn't stop the campaigns and then wait 2 months and then start everything again. We were doing it as we went. So it was really just keeping very clear in your mind, like, this is where we were, this is where we are now, what's the compare and contrast, and then continuously iterating on that over and over and over again, month to month.
Yeah, it's almost a tech industry mentality of, build it, get some feedback, improve it, iterate continually. Yeah. Definitely.
Perhaps not exactly 2-week sprints, but something like that. Yeah.
Yes. So we've talked about this, pushing forward, not pushing back. We've seen certainly a lot of places they sometimes even get defensive about their own perceptions, and that's where they do push back. So pushing forward, what does that mean to you? Maybe in a couple sentences, in terms of trying to use that known piece of your brand as a place to educate on what maybe isn't known.
Yeah, I think specifically with regard to Alberta, and I'm sure this applies to other places as well who have certain reputations. I mean, we were talking about Amsterdam and I was like, the cheese, and it's like, Amsterdam's so much more than cheese. Just as Alberta is so much more than just energy. But that said, a huge part of Alberta's identity is energy. We would be foolish to try and pretend that it's not. And I think when you look at the global stage of energy, Alberta is such a leader in that space that it would be to our disadvantage not to speak about our expertise in the area. I think to what you were saying around, sometimes sometimes if a place has a reputation for something, people can get defensive around that and either double down and only speak about that, which is also a flaw, or push away from it entirely and say that's not who we are, we're actually all these other things. But that sounds false if you do that, because everybody knows that that piece of you, in Alberta's case, energy, that is an inherent part of us. To deny that and say, oh, but we do tech and we do tourism and we do agriculture, it's like, yeah, but you also do energy, so why would you deny that? And you do it really well. So just tell people that and educate them on how you do it really well, because I think that's the piece too for Alberta. Yes, we are in like 10 different industries in a very prominent way. And in energy specifically, the brand that might be out there that people are disparaging of is because they don't know the depth of the expertise and the regulatory and the environment that we operate in. So a campaign like this really does give us an opportunity to talk about all of those 10 industries, including energy, talk about the talent, talk about the infrastructure, talk about what's going on from research perspective, talk about how the government is supportive, and give people more information about what they already know. So that pushing forward and not pushing back, I think, is really taking that opportunity to educate even further on whatever piece it is of your place brand that maybe you feel is really well known already. I would just say it's still worth spending time on that, even if you think everybody already knows.
Great comment. Let's transition a bit to the metrics. So here are the metrics we talked about. All the way, C Studios uses a particular method where we call it the LEADS framework. Learning, evaluating, analyzing, deciding. The S is settling, if we're so lucky to get somebody to settle there, which maybe. But this is a nice framework for showing the evolution of how people that are seeing this campaign are progressing through the proverbial funnel. But more importantly, how are different levels of this resulting in different levels below that. And you see here the marketing leads, the sales qualified leads, really an important part of your measurement. And this isn't necessarily your terminology, I should say. However, I'm going to show your terminology on the next page. And let's actually get there. This was the impact. These were some of the big numbers here. And so maybe if you, Shea, could go through and talk about the definition of prospects. Yeah. What's a lead status? What are investment opportunities? And how does your dictionary for showing this progression compare to others?
Yeah, so for us on our end, a prospect would be, so in our campaigns, say we have a piece of content, maybe it's a gated white paper or something like that. Someone fills in the form, they would receive the white paper, they go into an email string. Once they're in that email string, that drip campaign, they'd be considered a prospect because they've taken an action, they've downloaded something of relevance, they're in the email funnel, they'd be considered a prospect. Once they reply to an email, then we go through a vetting process on our end, basically to say, okay, they replied to an email. Are they expressing more interest? Are they telling us that they're interested in the province? Is it a nonsense email? Is it spam? Look at what came in. From there, we decide, does this stay as a prospect? Do we delete it as a prospect? Is it some nonsense and it's not actually relevant? They would stay as a prospect if they are not of a certain size, if they're not demonstrating some type of interest in investing in the province. They don't necessarily have to have a specific project at that stage, but if they're like, oh yes, Alberta does sound like it might meet a lot of our needs in the future, it's like, cool, great, that would qualify them. They'd have to have a certain capex, and ideally they have a certain number of jobs that they might be interested in bringing to the province. Again, the jobs and the capex, those don't have to exist right at the prospect stage, but if they do, that's fantastic. If they hit those markers from prospect, if they hit those markers, they've gone through the email campaign, they're a legitimate company, they're a legitimate person, they have some interest in Alberta, they're of a certain size, they have interest to potentially expand at some point, then we convert them to lead. So lead to us is, this is a legitimate conversation. Maybe they need a bit of warming up or they need more information, but they've expressed interest in the province in some way. That's a lead status. If that lead then says, hey, we have a project, we want to build a data center, we have a company that we want to expand into agriculture, we do fintech, we work in energy, whatever it is, when they say we're ready to look at Alberta and start looking at specific jurisdictions in the province, and we want to start hashing out the cost of what it would look like, et cetera, talk to us about the government regulatory. Now we're looking at an opportunity. So a lead is basically they have the potential. An opportunity is they're stating a specific interest, they have a specific project, and that project fits our parameters. Our parameters usually for Invest Alberta are 100 million of capex and or 100 jobs, sometimes both. We have a lot of partners in the economic development ecosystem in Alberta. So if a project doesn't meet those standards, we're still very happy to talk with them, and we will pass them to one of our ecosystem partners who's more well equipped to deal with the, say, smaller level of investment. Still important, very, very important, but they are more well equipped to deal with that at kind of a municipality level, I guess you could say. So that's where we get to the opportunity level. If and when an opportunity is completed, they've broken ground, they've done the investment, obviously then that's an opportunity one. If for some reason they have to pull out, obviously then it's just closed, or we didn't win that one, unfortunately it's lost. And then opportunities created, those are ones that are in the funnel, and they may be there for over a year, because as you can imagine, the sales funnels for convincing a company to move to a different place are quite long. The opportunities influence, this is an interesting one that we really, when I talk about the data from the year, we really doubled down on this. So these are opportunities that didn't come directly from a marketing lead. So it's not something that originated from a marketing component, but we had a lot of touch points with them through their whole process. So they may have filled out a form with us at some point. They may have visited our website multiple times. They may have gone through the email funnel, but maybe their first point of contact was actually one of our business development reps. So it didn't originate with marketing, but marketing was deeply involved through the whole process towards the creation of an opportunity. So I have a really nice tool called Octane 11. Probably shouldn't be like shamelessly plugging other people's software in this call, but it does a really good job of mapping our whole campaigns, everything that we've done, to show exactly when everything had a touch point. And also links with our Salesforce so that we can see when the sales touch points were happening as well. So it tells a really nice story. And this is where I'm saying, like, get granular with your data. Like, this is how you back up your campaigns. This is how you show your impact beyond just how many leads did we create. So like this is saying we had 81 opportunities influenced. Of those 81, 46 of them had a meaningful engagement, as in they had a significant website visit, they filled out a form, they took some action of some kind. And those 46 accounts by themselves, those opportunities accounted for $28 billion of potential investment. So quite significant.
Yeah, it's a really great way to tell a data story by digging deep, getting into those layers as you discuss. This opportunities influenced is a big area that we have been counseling various clients on, because it's not just about the leads. I think your team at one point was almost grading marketing and business development on a similar scale. And that was unfair. Marketing is a different part of, or
marketing's top of funnel.
a greater window into that life cycle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Marketing is top of funnel, maybe slightly into medium funnel, but we're not the ones that are closing the opportunities. We're there to keep them warm. We're there to identify them in the first place, and then we're there to help them along, as is demonstrated through the influenced line there.
Yeah, and just a quick note: if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat or Q&A, and we'll try to get those answered. But yeah, I think this is opportunities influence, especially with AI, and it's almost answering questions for people rather than coming to your website to find other ways to show that your marketing has been able to reach these individuals a certain number of times in a certain meaningful way, and draw that back to, okay, they didn't originate with marketing, but they certainly touched marketing at some point on that journey in that meaningful way. And so it's a much better picture, I think, in showing this in full when you're combining those influence opportunities with the developed ones that are sourced directly from marketing. Just in a last comment or two here, Shea, any lessons learned that we haven't covered yet that you would think that the audience would benefit from?
I think this isn't a marketing specific piece of advice, but I think it goes to anybody in any business unit. I think sometimes we have a tendency to assume that everybody has the same understanding that we do. So I'll talk specifically about marketing, but apply it to anything. To sit in marketing, to talk about influence, to talk about opportunities, to talk about our email funnels, like we're using language that we are familiar with. People are uncomfortable if they don't know what you're talking about. And often they don't want to admit, like, well, what's an email funnel? Like, what do you mean by influence? Like, a lot of people think influence and they just think awareness. And it's like, no, those are two completely different things. So taking the time to educate your business on what it is that you are doing, and really, without being punitive in any way, like giving them the opportunity to ask questions and really recognizing that they don't operate with all of the information that you have as a marketer. So I think that the way I talk about it with my team is we have a responsibility to marketing internally.
Mhm.
Like we have to be doing the work to raise awareness about what it is that we're doing and how we're integrated with everything else that the business is working on. Because otherwise you're just this marketing island and people don't know what you do, and it's some mysterious behind the curtain type of situation. And you don't want that, because that's a much harder space from which to get buy-in, especially from your leadership.
I love that phrase, and it's a great one to end on. Market your marketing internally. So a good final concept to end on. Well, Shea, thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you all for joining us as well, and hope this was a productive conversation for all of you. Wish everyone a lovely day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.